Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and today I want to show you the chainsaw I just bought. It's a Stihl MS 391. I'll show you a couple of things that I didn't know about that I realized from reading this manual for the chainsaw. I'll show you why I chose that model, why I felt like I needed to upgrade from my MS 250, and then we'll do a time test and see how long it takes me to cut through the same log that I ran time test on when I was doing the chainsaw sharpening video. You'll notice that my last several videos have been recorded inside, and that's because we're in a major ice storm. Now if you live up north, this might just be like normal day in the winter, but around here this doesn't happen often. I've got the tractor up here because I'm getting ready to load my pitching mounds for FedEx, and also because someone just came up and picked up a couple of IBC totes of firewood and I set them in with the tractor. But anyway, let's go inside and get to work on that saw. So when we bought this bigger property, I knew I was going to want a good chainsaw. And so I asked a couple of guys that I trust, you know, what kind of model would you recommend? They said get a Stihl MS 271. That's a Farm Boss. And I went into the dealership to look at the 271. Actually, I wasn't even going to shop around that much. I was just going to buy a 271. And the salesman told me, you know, he asked me how often I was planning to cut and what types of cutting I was going to do. And he said, you know, we've got a deal going right now. I could save you about $100 if you buy the MS 250. And he said it's almost the same size saw. It's going to feel like the same saw unless you're trying to cut something really big. And he said for what you're doing, if it was me, I'd save the $100. And so I went with that recommendation. And this has been a good saw. So if you've watched much on this channel, you've seen me cut through some big logs with this saw. Even more than one occasion, I've cut something that was over twice the width of the bar. And you know, you find a way to get it cut. So the saw's done a good job, but as soon as this ice storm passes, I'm going to start felling some bigger trees. And all of those trees are going to be at least twice the width of this bar. And I said, no way this is the saw for felling those trees. And so I was kind of wishing I'd got a 271, although really they still recommend like an 18-inch bar, maybe 20 at the max on that. And the 261 goes up from the $300 price range to around a $600 price range for the same basic size of saw, but it's like a pro saw, and it's lighter and has a little bit more engine power. So this is a 43cc saw. The Farm Boss is a 50cc, and this saw is a 64cc. So that's a pretty big step up. When I started looking at a bigger chainsaw, the two versions I was seeing recommended a lot were the 362 and the 462. And the 462 is an absolute beast of a saw. I believe that one's 80cc, but just holding it felt like more saw than I needed. I mean, it's going to be heavy and, you know, it'd be great for certain situations, but I think it's more than what I needed. So I was really settling in on the 362, but that was on back order where I was shopping, and that's around an $800 saw with a 25-inch bar. Whereas I could get this 391, which is actually a higher CC, I could get that with the 25-inch bar for $600. So this came out to be a great value, basically being the cheapest saw that would run the 25-inch bar that I wanted. And there are actually a couple of downsides to it. It's not just, oh, you get a better saw for a lower price. This has the standard carburetor on it like this saw does. This is basically, by my understanding, the largest homeowner saw you could get. Or the largest farm and ranch saw you can get. But like the 362 is a smaller CC saw, but it's a pro saw. It has a better weight to power balance. So it's considerably lighter and just a little bit more premium features on it. But I feel like for me, just felling trees occasionally and then cutting them up for firewood, I'm going to use this saw quite a bit whenever I'm actually cutting up the smaller limbs, and this will be more like the felling saw. But anyway, I think I might have made a good choice. I hope I'm right. And I'm going to do a test here in a minute after we get it fired up. Although I know that you're not going to get the full power that a saw is capable of the first day, I still think it'll give us a good comparison. So I mentioned earlier that I was going through the owner's manual, and that's something I feel kind of like an idiot for not going through the manual when I bought this saw, because I'm sure a lot of people are guilty of this, but I said, you know, I've run a chainsaw before. I know how to run a chainsaw. Why do I need to read the manual? Well, I don't even know where the manual for that one is. I'm sure I could find it. But when I was reading this manual, I found something that I really needed to know. And turns out that the same little thing applies to the other saw. And this might be something that seems like common knowledge to a lot of the people watching, or people who've been doing cutting wood their whole lives. But this has a summer and a winter mode on it. And I didn't know that until I was reading through the manual. Turns out my other saw does too. So when you remove the top cover off, right here is just a little plastic clip. One side has a sun on it, the other side has a snowflake on it. When you're running it in the winter, you want the snowflake pointing up, because then it changes where it draws the air, and it draws in the warm air off of the saw to help it run smoother, rather than drawing just the cold air from the surrounding area. And that'll help it run better in the winter, but it's important that you flip it back over in the summer so that your saw doesn't overheat. So that's just one example of reasons why we should all be reading the manuals when we buy a piece of equipment like this. Especially, just like a tractor manual. You spend a ton of money on a tractor, and then a lot of people don't read the manual. I read about 2/3 of mine and said, well, I'll finish later, and never got back to it. But there were multiple things in that tractor manual that I had no idea, and so I'm going to try to force myself to read the manual on a piece of equipment like this. It's got a lot more information in there too, little things like adjusting the carburetor, safe operating or safe starting procedures. It's all good information. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this fueled up. So I was really excited yesterday. The last video I put out, I installed my full firewood cutting rack on the back of the tractor. If you haven't seen it, it's an Artilian modular rack, and I can put all different tool setups on it. Right now I have a chainsaw holder, and then a fuel rack that holds your bar and chain oil, the gas can, felling wedges, a sledgehammer, and then the third compartment is a toolbox, and in that toolbox I've got extra chain sharpener, a screwdriver. I'll keep this chainsaw tool in there. It's really a neat setup. I was just thrilled having it all set up so that any day that I say I want to cut some wood, I just get on the tractor and go. I don't have to round up all the tools. The only downside now is I've got 2 saws that I would probably want to have with me. So I may get another chainsaw holder to take both saws with me. I'll have to look at that and decide exactly what I want to do here. Another little thing that's probably common knowledge, but I hadn't really given much thought to. It says never to fill the gas tank all the way. It says leave a 1/2 inch. It helps it draw fuel better. And I've noticed here lately that whenever I put fuel in in my 250 chainsaw, it seems like it's hard to start. And I've wondered if maybe I'm tipping it too far and it's getting flooded or something. And I think I'm just overfilling it. This is a Sure can, which is my favorite type of fuel can. Especially when you've got it in a rack, like I can put it on the rack in the back of the tractor. You don't have to take it even out of that holder to fuel up. You just put the saw underneath it and drop this hose down. So I definitely recommend the Sure cans. We use Sure cans for our mix fuel and for the regular gas on our mowing trailer. Okay. Get bar and chain oil. I don't have a funnel in here. We'll see if I can do this without spilling it everywhere. I was tempted. I saw that Stihl 500i on a couple of YouTube channels. And that fuel injected chainsaw is definitely tempting, but I was really thinking about what I've already invested in all this, and you know, even the smallest bar configuration that they offer in that, you're still looking at $1,200. And I'm sure it's a nice saw, I just can't justify it. I don't cut enough wood to justify that price range of saw. Chain tension's good. This is a 3/8 chain. My other's a .325 chain. So I've already ordered the Stihl 2-in-1 sharpener that is made for the 3/8 chain. The saw, when I was in the store, had a 20-inch bar on it, and it was really interesting. And the salesman and I went through a few Google searches, and he had his manual out. He even called somebody, and they were trying to decide if this saw was rated for a 25-inch bar. Because he can order the saw, as a dealer, he could order the saw with a 20-inch bar or a 25. But one of his spec sheets listed appropriate bars to use with this, and it did not say 25-inch. It just said to use an 18 or 20-inch bar. And he said, why would they let me order it with the 25-inch bar if it's not recommended for it? And I looked at some forums and some different things, and from what I could see, this is fine to run a 25-inch bar. And if anyone's bought a saw and then wanted to change the length of bar, you know that you're looking at anywhere between $50 and $120 for a bar and chain combination. I paid a little bit more for this bar than they had a cheaper 25-inch bar, but this one has a replaceable tip on it. I mean, again, I'm not a professional logger. It's not like I'm going to burn through that quickly, but I thought it was worth that little bit extra to have a replaceable tip on the end. A couple cool things I learned watching videos was, it was Wrangler Star was showing that you should flip your bar upside down every other time that you take the chain off, because it wears harder on the top. So you want your bar to wear evenly, flip it over and run it with the words upside down half the time. So, alright, we're fueled up. The manual said that this could take 10 or more pulls the first time to get it to fire, because it's got to cycle up fuel into the engine, your first use, before it can go through the normal starting process. It also mentions this little black knob here, which I was wondering about. I haven't had a saw that had one before. This is a decompression valve. So you push that down when you're starting, it gives you more compression, and then when it fires, it'll pop back up. So if you're trying to start it, you've got that push down and you hear it fire but not fully start, there's a good chance that this valve popped up, and you'll push it back down again as you continue starting it. Alright, so we're going to choke it. Got to pull the throttle to choke it. Go to half choke. Alright, so I've got this set in the winter mode like I showed you a minute ago. So I'm going to go ahead and set the saw outside and just let it run for a few minutes while I'm getting a log and bringing it up here. Alright, I measured this same side of this same log with my MS-250 with a brand new chain, a dull chain, and a freshly sharpened chain. And the fastest time we got was with the new chain. It was 1 minute and 3 seconds. Now this saw should be good and warmed up, but it's not broken in. But it is a new chain, so it should give us a good time. And if anything, the new saw is at a disadvantage because this is a branch right here that gets wider as we go that way. So we'll actually be cutting through a little bit wider section. I'm going to use a stopwatch here, and that way I won't have to wait until I rewatch the video to know how long it takes. I'm going to start it and let it run in a spot where I can see it. I'll start cutting when it hits 1 minute, rather than trying to start it and jam it in my pocket real quick. I want to get my glove on and everything. About 45 seconds. All right, that was about 50 seconds. So I imagine it'd be quicker once the saw is broke in, but it's very obviously an improvement. And when we were timing it before, he stopped it while I walked around the log to cut from the other side because it had the shorter bar. So any way you look at it, it's going to be an improvement. It'll especially be an improvement for felling now that I can run that longer bar. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. In a minute, you'll see links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.